Welcome to Heartache, Health, and Healing. I'm your host, Brenda Munt. I started this podcast to share my journey after losing my husband, and it became a space for exploring how we can all heal, grow, and live more radiant lives. Each episode is filled with insights, stories, and practical tools to help you find light and purpose no matter where you are on your path. This ad is sponsored to you by Glossy. Say goodbye to bloating, digestive issues, and skin woes. Introducing Glossy, a skin and gut routine you can drink. A delicious daily supplement that transforms your skin and gut from the inside out. Science-backed, look and feel amazing. Order at getglossy.com/Brenda Munt or click on the link in the show notes for a discount. Are you looking for everyday essentials that are healthier, safer, and eco-friendly? I work with a wellness company that offers a wide range of products, from natural household cleaners and personal care items to quality supplements and snacks, all delivered right to your door. These products are effective, affordable, and a great way to make small changes toward a healthier lifestyle. For me, it's been about knowing I'm making better choices without spending extra time or money. So if you're curious and want to learn more, I'd love to share how these products could fit into your life as well. So click on the Wellness Online Shopping link in the show notes and let's chat about how to get started. Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm sitting down with someone who brings a wealth of knowledge and heart to the world of health and wellness. Aly Johnston is a board-certified family nurse practitioner and the founder of Well by AM Nursing. She started her practice back in 2021 to help people manage obesity and hormone-related issues, and she's been making an impact ever since. With over 20 years of experience in the medical field, Aly has worked in a variety of healthcare settings across the country. She has a deep passion for helping others not only feel better physically, but truly live well. Along with her specialty in obesity management, she also has a strong interest in functional medicine, IV therapy, hormone replacement therapy, and aesthetics. But what I love most about Aly is her heart for education and her desire to empower people with knowledge so they can take charge of their own health. So I cannot wait for you to hear our conversation. So Aly, let's dive in. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Brenda.
Yes. So if we could kind of give us a little background, if you could share a little bit about what led you into the world of nursing and then eventually starting Well by AM Nursing.
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I grew up in the Midwest and I had two parents that had a lot of health problems. And at a young age, I saw them struggle with, going to their doctors and, they were just prescribed certain things for their disease processes. And, they were compliant with taking their medication, but they only continued to get worse as they got older. When I was 17, my dad had a massive stroke and it led to an early onset dementia. So he was diagnosed with dementia at age 53. And I, knew as a teenager, seeing them with all of their health problems, that there was a better way to do healthcare. And I already had a desire and a passion to go into healthcare. And so I decided on nursing. And I actually started college at 16, graduated with my bachelor's of science in nursing and then several years later, I got my master's in nursing. So I have a master's of science in nursing and family nurse practice. And I really just wanted to treat patients like my parents, like both of my parents. I think at some point we're probably okay, well managed, but it led to really severe disease processes that impacted both of their lives for worse. My dad ended up dying at age 61 with complications from type 2 diabetes, vascular disease, and dementia. And my mom, she is still alive, but she has severe medical problems. She is 63 and she has diastolic heart failure. And I, hate to see that, but it was many damage that my parents, were not correctly managed by their healthcare providers. And so I could go down a whole rabbit hole of like how broken our healthcare system is. So they really drove me. They they drove me in, getting an education and learning about the root cause of some of the issues that we commonly see in our country. And so years later, I ended up going into obesity and hormone management because I have since discovered and realized that our body is so interconnected and our hormones basically direct everything. It's like, the guy that's directing traffic when there's a traffic jam, that guy is hormones, top to bottom of our bodies. And so I'm still learning every day, and I love what I do, and I love that I get to help patients feel better and look better, and hopefully prevent things like my parents have gone through.
Yeah, yeah. That's so hard, watch. And your parents are young. I mean, your dad was young when he passed.
Yeah, and so he passed away November of 2022, and so he was 61. And for the last 8 years of his life, he lived with me, and I helped take care of him. And he got to a point where he needed 24-hour care. So yes, he was very, very young. And so when I was considering, having caregivers and having, possibly an assisted living, they
Yeah.
thought much older. And I was like, I don't want to put my 50-something-year-old father with a bunch of 70 or an 80-year-old. So I held on to him, and he lived with me in my home for several years. And then I got to a point where I really needed him to be managed outside of just me. And so I
Hmm.
put him into a board and care that was a smaller facility with people that also had dementia. And that was very, very hard. So I was still able to see him regularly, and still, was responsible to take him to all of his doctor's appointments, which he had a lot. And, I saw him slowly decline over those 8 years, but he passed away from a vascular complication that is typically caused by type 2 diabetes. And he had
Oh,
clot in his knee that went all the way to his toe, his great toe.
wow.
And before this all happened, he told me, because he had vascular complications prior to that, he was like, he was with it enough and cognizant enough to know what was going on. And I asked him, I was like, Dad, if this were to ever happen again, if you were ever to have a clot, the option, or a option, is to have an amputation. Would you ever want me to have your surgeon amputate your leg? And he was like, firm no. And so and he understood that if he, had that happen again, that it would kill him. And so it did happen again, and I gave him the option, and his surgeon, recommended amputation. And I made the decision no, but he had already told me no. And so
Hmm.
that was very, very hard, because he was still fairly young. I mean, he had just turned 61 when he passed away.
Yeah, gosh. So how did you come up with the name Well by AM Nursing?
Yeah, I'll go back to the beginning of my nursing career. So when I first became an RN, I went into adult critical care. So like I worked night shift in the ICU for a few years, and then I cross-trained in other critical care and surgical units. And on night shift as a nurse in a lot of units, doctors will order blood labs, and you have to draw them at like 3 or 4 in the morning. And the lab will come around and pick up labs, and sometimes you have to go pick them up, or drop them off. And every hospital I worked at, I feel like this was the same conversation. I'd be in the patient's room drawing blood, and the phlebotomist would be at the door, like making sure they were, getting the information right on the blood labs. And they would say, I just want to make sure like your initials are correct, because they have to ask for the nurse's initials. And my maiden name was Mikowski, it was an M. And so my
Okay.
initials were AM. And people would ask me like, oh, is this, AM, are these your initials, or is it AM like the morning? And I said, it is AM like the morning, but that's also my initials. And so I said that every day for years. It's, AM like the morning, AM like the morning. And so when I was thinking of business names, I was like, okay, like, I want to be something, I want to do something holistic. I want to do something in wellness, like not really tertiary care, which is where I had worked and lived in my career for over a decade. And I was like, oh, like if you could be like well by tomorrow, like that would be awesome. It's not usually attainable for a lot of people. But I was like, oh, I used to do it all the time. It was like AM like the morning. And so I just chose well by AM. And that was by me, because that's my name, Alyssa Mikowski.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, throw for that.
So what is it that made you decide to specialize in obesity and hormone management?
Yeah, great question. So, my first year as an NP, I worked with a physician near where I live in Northern California. He was an internist, so we did adult primary care primarily. Like we did have some kids that came in, but most of our patients were 18 and older. And he was actually an obesity management provider. Like he subspecialized in obesity management. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
patients, even if they had a primary care provider in the area, they would actually come to us for weight loss medications. And this was
Okay.
right before the wave of like GLP-1s in America. Like GLP-1 drugs had been around for a while and had been on international markets prior to they came to got approved by the FDA in America. So it was like the year before they became like super massively popular where everybody knew about them. I started working in primary care and working with this doctor learning weight management. And then when they got released by the FDA, we started kind of weaving those in. And I was just a salaried nurse practitioner. Like I worked Monday to Friday, like 8 to 5 and saw however many patients came in the door. And I thought, while I was working there, I was like, okay, like let me get my experience, learn, and I could do this same thing, but tweak it where I'm just treating patients with obesity related conditions and hormone related conditions because they do, like I said at the beginning, they intertwine. And so
Mm-hmm.
and at that time as well, I was going through my weight loss journey. So right before I actually opened my business, I had gastric sleeve weight loss surgery. And I was like, okay, I know what it is like to be obese. And when I'm treating my patients, I can understand what they're going through. Like, they don't tell me something and look at me like I have no idea. Like, they were able to see because I was obese, even as a
Right.
nurse practitioner, I was. And so I was able to easily establish relationships and rapport with my patients because I knew how they felt and I was
Mm-hmm.
going through it. And so had my surgery. In about 6 months, I lost about 80 pounds. And about the end of that 6, 7 month mark is when I opened my business. And since then, I've lost more weight. And in like the last 4.5 years, I have lost 120 pounds and kept it off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so even my patients now, like the patients that have been with me for a few years, like they know that I was heavier, but my like brand new patients, sometimes I do share with them like, hey, like I know what it is like to carry an extra 100 plus pounds around and the pain and the multiple issues that come with that.
Right.
So I feel like even now, even though I've lost the weight and I'm, living a healthy lifestyle, like I can still, feel and understand their pain and guide them through that a lot easier than someone that's never been through it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Because something like that doesn't, and how you felt during that period of your life, that just doesn't go away, you know?
No, I mean, the one thing I think a lot of providers, doctors, nurse practitioners, um, maybe not fully understand, and there are some that do. I've heard this on podcasts, I've read it in literature, that obesity is a chronic relapsing disease, which really means that even if you do lose the weight, even if you do take a medication, change your diet, you change your lifestyle, there are certain factors that most people, not all, but most people that are chronically obese have in them genetically, and they're actually called obesogens, and they're more known now, and there's studies being done on them and what contributes to obesity. But unfortunately, we can't really change our genetic makeup. But we can change what we do on the outside, right? Like our lifestyle and our diet and the drugs that we take, and all that. So there is a field of genetics called epigenetics that talks about how we can change some of our genetic makeup, but to fully change whether we are obese or not, it does take multiple factors. Like for me, I'll share what happened for me. Like I had a radical surgery. I take weight loss medications regularly to maintain my weight, and I'm very, very conscious of what I put in my body. And it's a daily, weekly, monthly, all the time internal conversation with myself because I could make really bad choices. I could revert back to the way I was eating prior to having surgery.
Hmm.
I've chosen not to. So, um, it is kind of like a daily pep talk when you're talking about maintaining or losing weight and keeping weight off. So, um, like when I wake up, I know that I have to have 20 to 30 grams of protein. I have to have so many ounces of water, and I can't slam it all in at 5 o'clock because I had weight loss surgery, you know? So, um, some people do that. They'll fast all day and they think they're being healthy. And they're like, oh, I'll get my 80 ounces of water at the end of the day, or I'll have my, one meal at 6 o'clock. But for a lot of people that doesn't do them very well. And it's actually a problem, and it causes more weight storage and then obesity. So for people who have not had weight loss surgery or are not on weight loss medication, it is education related to their diet and their lifestyle and making their health a priority, which is hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. I do want to talk more about the whole obesity and hormone management, but before we get to that, so now you've worked in the healthcare for over 20 years. So how has your perspective on health and healing evolved over that time period?
Yeah, so I feel like just in the last few years, especially since the COVID pandemic, there's been more transparency and more availability of information literally at our fingertips. I mean, of course, the internet has been around for a long time, but
Right.
people are just not apologetic about putting stuff online, and which it can be good or bad. But when it comes to like health information, yes, there's health misinformation, but there are a lot of people who are dedicated to, posting YouTube videos, Instagram, TikToks, and getting information out there for free, where I think there is a lot of gatekeeping in healthcare. A lot of people want to say, oh, you can't get this information unless you, have an appointment or are in an insurance-based system and have to wait for weeks or months for an appointment for your provider. So I feel like since I've been in healthcare, there has been a positive shift, but there is still this overwhelming, like, lurking feeling of like, okay, well, it's still not crystal clear. A lot of people, despite the amount of material we have online available to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that really be driven by the healthcare organizations, but unfortunately it's not, because a lot of healthcare organizations are strictly concerned with making money.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they may say like, their responsibilities to their patients, well, their responsibility is to keep their doors open, and the way to do that is with numbers. And so
Yeah.
I think overall it's gotten better since I've been in healthcare, since I've been a nurse, definitely since I've been a nurse practitioner. But I think we have a long way to go in this country as far as really delivering and educating and implementing wellness in our country.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper about the obesity and hormone management.
Okay.
So, what do you feel is like one of the biggest misunderstandings people have when it comes to managing their weight?
Wow, that is a big, a big can right there. So, um, I would say that I think a lot of people think, because they've heard it, especially people who have, been, maybe they were born in the 70s or 80s, grew up in the 80s or 90s, that they think calories in equals calories out, meaning whatever you put in your body, you can work off or expend, and therefore there's this balance. And
Yeah.
for some people that can work, but it is not the overwhelming, majority of what can help people, men and women alike. And then we throw in multiple disease processes, diabetes, heart failure, high cholesterol, osteoarthritis, all these things that are inflammatory. And so people can't understand and see that there's a balance in the food that we eat and the lifestyle that we choose, not just to exercise, but sleep, stress, our, work-life balance, family, like all these things actually influence our hormones, and therefore make us hold on to weight or lose weight because of what we choose to do and choose to put in our bodies. And so most of the patients that I see, men or women, it is not a balance of calories. Like, I never tell a patient to count calories. I think the only thing I really encourage them to monitor or maybe count is ounces of water a day and amount of protein, as long as the person has healthy kidney function, because protein can damage it. you have poor kidney functioning. But a lot of people don't understand that it's a protein and fat and hydration issue and electrolyte. And we
Hmm.
have been taught for many, many years that we need to restrict and we need to, have low fat and low sugar and this and that and low sodium, and all of those things negatively impact our ability to lose or keep off weight and have a healthy lifestyle. So that was a lot, but I think that's the big. It's really just an understanding of like the balance of nutrition and your lifestyle. And so many people, even if they do have a good diet on paper, their lifestyle is not good, and so they're effectively stressed all the time.
Yeah. And then I feel like there's, because then I even know, I definitely don't have the knowledge like you do when it comes to, to weight management by any means. Um, but I mean, I know there's also places out there that be like, they'll promote on social media and all that, like where you can eat like, over 2,000 calories and eat what you want and all that, and yet get into this great shape and all this kind of stuff. And when I see stuff like that, it actually really annoys me because I feel like how can you? I'm sorry, what was that? You broke up.
Oh, I said I'm annoyed by those kind of posts too,
So,
because I mean, there are people out there, bodybuilders, who are, pretty lean already or trying to get lean. And it's like, yeah, you do need to have more calories and more food and stuff if you're, a very like hyper athletic person. But for the normal average man and woman, like that doesn't work.
yeah, yeah. So when I see that, I get so annoyed because I'm like, okay, yeah, that's maybe if you're like spending Lord knows how many hours in the gym working out and you're very restrictive for a certain period of time and all that, but and yeah, I just find it so super frustrating. um, but I wanted to, so hormones.
Mhm.
So as we know, they play a huge role in our overall health, especially women. So what are some signs or symptoms that someone might experience if their hormones are out of balance?
Oh, okay. So, surprisingly, I feel like I see hormone imbalance symptoms younger and younger. And,
Really?
oh yeah, like I've even had like late 20, early 30 female patients coming to me with perimenopause symptoms, which is really, really early. I mean, some perimenopause patients that start to exhibit symptoms on average is usually like mid to late 40s. But lately, when I say lately, like over the last couple of years, and even more recently, I've had some more perimenopause patients, they're in their late 30s to early 40s. I'm like, wow, this is a big shift. Um, and it could be so many factors, but it could be the things that they're consuming. There's so many toxins in our environment. And
Oh,
all of those things play a role. But the biggest symptoms that I see that drive a man or a woman to the doctor or provider for some sort of assessment is they're typically exhibiting a lot of fatigue, brain fog, or just like not feeling clear, like not having a lot of clarity on a daily basis. Um,
mm-hmm.
Sex drive or libido issues. I typically see that in men more than women. But sometimes through a conversation of other symptoms, women will eventually come forward and say, yes, my libido is in the toilet. I don't want my partner to touch me, not because I don't love them, but because I just don't feel like having it. Like there's no drive there.
Yeah.
And I also see men and women too that they are holding on to extra weight. And so they may come to me initially for weight management because that's like my, bread and butter. But
Mm-hmm.
that may know and realize, oh, like the weight that I'm holding on to is not necessarily truly obesity related. It may be other hormones in my body that need to be regulated. Like we have so many hormones, the most common sex hormones for men and women, we all probably know, like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. But there is a plethora of other hormones that play a role in our desire for sex, our desire to eat or not eat, our desire to work out, like all of these things. And so, yeah, most commonly I would say fatigue, brain fog, low libido, and then through interviewing, through the clinical assessment, the patients typically will come forward with more complaints, and then it really warrants a full laboratory exam and assessment of their lifestyle, which typically needs to be adjusted. I almost always see that. We need to change something that's going on in their life, not just add on meds to get them to an optimal level.
Yeah. So I feel, and I may be wrong by saying this, I feel like if you go to, and I'm not saying this, I'm not bashing general practitioners by any means. I feel like if you go to a general practitioner for your health, so like when they run a blood panel, I don't feel like they get as in depth as they should, as if you would go to somebody like yourself, somebody that
Right.
kind of more specializes. Is that fairly accurate to say?
Yes. And I mean, I don't know how other systems outside of America do it. I'm not speaking to that, but typically what I see here in the United States is that if, Sally, 50-year-old woman is going to her general PCP or primary care provider, or even an OBGYN, if it's an insurance-based practice, meaning they're taking a commercial, Blue Cross or Anthem or a commercial insurance,
Yep.
they will say, here's your physical assessment. Maybe everything is fine. Maybe there's some abnormalities. We're going to run your general lab panel, which is not a full hormone panel, and it's not a full metabolic panel, typically what I see. And doctor or practitioner will say, oh, well, on paper, you look fine. You're normal. Like, I'll see you in 6 months or next year. And I think 90+% of my patients tell me that, oh, well, my doctor said my labs are fine, but I don't feel fine. And the doctor will dismiss them. And so there is this like perception, and I think reality, that a lot of men and women are gaslit because of the insurance-based model is training these physicians and training practitioners in an insurance-based clinic or hospital system, that they are not to dive deep because it's too much time. And like I mentioned earlier, the bottom line is the dollar. And so the more patients that come through the door every day, the more money they make, and they can keep that practice open and pay their providers. But if they're spending 30 minutes or an hour and then running labs that the insurance plan doesn't approve of, and they're actually losing money every single. And so the model is about dollars over patients. That's just how it is. And if you want a full understanding and synopsis of what's going on with you, like a picture of your hormones in your labs right now, you need somebody to do those labs that's not concerned with those things, and they will draw whatever you want. Now, if you're still very cost conscious, there's ways to do it to keep the bill down, right? You don't want to spend so much money. But if you're just going to your general provider, their concern is not your overall wellness, which is really unfortunate, but it's the truth in my opinion.
Yeah. I feel like it goes back to the whole thing of the healthcare system being broken, which could be a whole different conversation.
About that one. Yeah.
So what kind of approaches or treatments do you typically explore with your clients?
Yeah. So if somebody comes to me for weight management and they are just coming to weight management, I always, do like a visit with them and ask them their medical history. And sometimes they do have to get a medical history from their provider, like, request records. But most of my patients that come to me are fairly young and healthy, like on the outside, but metabolic, they obviously have some problems. And so I may run labs if they haven't had labs done recently. If they've had labs, I'll review them and I go over them together with the patient. And if they opt for injectable or oral weight loss medications, I discussed, all the risk benefits, how it works, the expectations, the clinical study results, my clinical practice results, what I've seen in the years of practice, and then follow up with them regularly. So for weight loss patients, I check in with them every week, just virtually, like they send me a message through like an email they receive. And if there's something going on, then I can see them quicker than there's, 3 or 6 month follow-up. And then if everything's going fine and they're, consistently losing weight down to their goal weight, then I see them once a year. And that's the majority, because most patients, they're coming to me for weight loss, they're compliant with therapy, like they want to lose the weight. So they follow what I say. Now for hormone management, it's a little bit tighter as far as like contact. So I do 2 visits within the first month. So I see them for an exam, I order labs, and the labs are, pretty detailed and long. And so I do another visit within a week to 2 weeks to review those labs, and then come up with a treatment plan, whether it's hormones and or supplements, or just supplements or just hormones. But I almost always make lifestyle modification recommendations, meaning, if they, are expressing that they have brain fog, like we really need to do a deeper evaluation of like, do they have sleep apnea? Do I need to refer you to a medicine specialist? Are you, experiencing other health conditions that I need to refer out or like have a deeper look at, even though I'm not their, primary care provider. And treatment plans vary based on conditions and based on lab results. But most of the time, the patients that I'm seeing, it's injectable weight loss medications. And occasionally I'll have patients on bioidentical progesterone and or estrogen. Every now and again, I'll prescribe testosterone. I don't really have a heavy testosterone practice, which I'm fine with because testosterone is a controlled substance. It requires a lot of follow-up with patients. So yeah, I mean, like I said, every patient is different. And in my practice, I tailor it to the patient's needs and their concerns. So I'm not cookie cuttering everything for each patient. It's like, okay, you come to me with these complaints. I'm going to, address them and come up with a plan specifically for you. But for the most part, if it's management, I'm still tailoring it to them because some patients can't tolerate the same dosages as, patient A, B, and C. So I come up with a treatment plan specific to each patient.
Okay, which makes sense. Well, makes sense to me at least anyway. So now you have the interest in functional medicine. So how does that tie into the work that you do?
Yeah, so I will be very honest. I don't do a whole lot of functional medicine. I think it's very fascinating, and I'm learning. I have a couple of colleagues that like I bounce ideas off of. We all discuss like patient cases from time to time. But if somebody comes to me and they want a functional review, and when I say that, I mean like a lab review of certain things, and it can be all kinds of crazy. Labs will look at mineral content, stool tests, breath tests. There's so many lab tests out there that can look at all these different levels. But I let patients know that I am not trained in functional medicine. I'm just learning it. And I think it's very interesting because truly functional medicine is about getting to the root cause of whatever concern or concerns you have, even if it is obesity. And in my practice, I routinely am prescribing weight loss medications and maybe not doing a functional deep dive on the large majority of patients. But I do have that availability to patients to order and offer them. So like I said, like the lab offerings are just still like boggles my mind because there's so many labs you can order and check different levels. And then from there, if it is something that somebody really wants to do, and they want a better treatment plan than just, weight management or hormone management, I have some colleagues that I refer to in my area that's their bread and butter. And so I work with some colleagues in my area that like, that's their thing. They dive deeper in nutrition, dive deeper into the labs. And I'm happy to give those patients to them because we can, again, bounce ideas off each other and say, this is what works for this patient. This is the best treatment plan. And we learn from it. So, yeah, by no means I'm not a functional medicine expert. I'm still learning and I love to learn. So, yeah.
So I wanted, you and I had talked about this before when we did our little meet and greet, and I just want to touch on it because I feel it's important. Just because, like I share with you, that I know I have people in my life that I know it has impacted. So you had the gastric, what is it called, the gastric sleeve, correct?
Yes, you got it.
Yeah. So there's that, and then there's the gastric bypass. Two different type of surgeries, correct? So my understanding is the gastric bypass is much more involved. I'm not sure if that's the right word to use or not, as compared to the sleeve. Is that correct?
Do you want me to explain the difference?
Yes, I want listeners to understand that just because they have one of these surgeries for whatever reason, that it's not a get out of jail free card.
Here.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. So if you could
Yeah.
kind of go
Yeah.
through the difference
So
between the two, that would be great.
absolutely. So, and I'll preface this by saying I am not a surgeon. This is just what
Yep.
I know, and how it was described to me from my surgeons and my medical training. So, a gastric sleeve, they call it a vertical sleeve gastrectomy because the surgeon basically takes a sleeve-looking device and they vertically put it over the stomach and they cut off typically about 2/3 of the stomach. Some surgeons opt to leave that excess stomach cavity in your body, like they don't actually remove it. Some surgeons will remove it endoscopically. And so like my surgeon removed the 2/3 of that stomach, like pulled it out of a hole in my stomach. That sounds gross, but so you're left with this vertical stomach, pouch, they call it, as opposed to like the size of an NFL football. You have the size of like a medium to large banana, depending on, the surgeon's margins. Um,
Hmm.
there is no anatomical rerouting of the bottom of the stomach. And so what I mean with that is the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, that's the clinical surgical term. They actually cut off a lot more of the stomach and they reroute that stomach pouch to the top of the duodenum, which is not a normal connection. And so part of the top of your large intestine actually, is not connected to the stomach anymore. And so they make the stomach, again, the size normally of like an NFL football down to the size of a golf ball. And
Hmm.
so, and then the bottom of that golf ball is rerouted to a different part of your intestine. And so you can imagine, even if, someone listening is not in healthcare or not in medicine or definitely not in surgery, there can be some pros and cons to that. The biggest pro is losing weight, right? Because our
Hmm.
stomach from this to this.
Yep.
But when we anatomically change anything in our body, there can be some absorption issues. And chronically, patients experience like vitamin B12 and vitamin D deficiency because they can't absorb it because that part of their stomach is gone and that's directly responsible for absorbing those vitamins. Um,
Okay.
but to answer your question about it's not a get out of jail free card, is that yes, you can lose the weight, but typically, when I see somebody with gastric bypass surgery, they have rapidly lost weight and it can cause a lot of hormone related issues. And sometimes it takes a long time to rebalance them, maybe even years later. Um, like, people can lose massive hair loss. They can have thyroid imbalances that take drugs and a lot of treatments to rebalance. And then, like I said, the chronic vitamin deficiency, which can cause mood issues and skin issues and all kinds of other issues in the body. And so, patients have to be aware of that going into these surgical procedures and know that there could be some long-standing health problems, even if the weight is gone. And so, psychologically speaking, it can be good for a lot of people, but a lot of people have not switched their brain to say, okay, I'm going to get ready for this new body. And so they're
Hmm.
still living in this obese body and they have not made the food changes and the lifestyle changes to accommodate their new stomach. So, some patients can regain the weight because they are just not being compliant with their diet and their rapid body weight loss. Um, so, I've seen some patients lose weight and do really, really well. I've seen some patients lose weight and then gain it all back in just a few years, despite their
Wow.
stomach being, really small. So I'm not a surgeon and I, don't evaluate these patients for the appropriateness of surgery, but I think the evaluation should actually be more detailed than it is in our country. Some insurance plans, let you wait 4 to 6 months. Some you can get it right away. You don't have to wait at all. But I think the evaluative stages that they have for this surgery is good, but it needs to be better to avoid
Hmm.
these chronic complications in weight loss patients. So, if you're listening and you have had a weight loss surgery or are about to have a weight loss surgery or even considering it, you really need to do a deep dive within yourself and say, is this something that I can actually do, psychologically speaking, because it is really a big mind shift to be able to accommodate that new body and that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because our behaviors, I mean, just like you said, it's like our behaviors have so much play, so much into it all that it's just like we can't have that same mindset and the same behaviors as our obese selves did.
Exactly. Yeah. And it takes some time. And
Yeah.
I think patients need to be going to counseling or therapy, whether it's weekly, monthly, every several weeks, to understand why they got to be obese and how they can shift out of that. I actually did food and trauma counseling for over a year while I was going through my first year. Actually, it was like a few months before I had the surgery, and then almost a year after. I just continued in therapy, and it was really game changing and life changing for me because
Mm-hmm.
some things that I uncovered about myself that I thought were just fine, but they weren't. And so, and from there, I'm able to, think about what I'm doing before I do something that's negatively impacting my health. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 It definitely does. So, so what does wellness mean to you personally?
It's a continuum. I think for me, every day and now in my age and stage of life and what I've been through, especially in the last few years with losing a parent, starting businesses, having business partners that were not great, the ups and downs of life. I really just want wellness for myself to be that I feel good, and good is not every day, but if I
Mm-hmm.
make efforts and strides to get there, even if it's a bigger majority or portion of my week, every month, every year, um, that is well to me. And so some people may say, to themselves, like, I want to have a good hemoglobin A1C or a good cholesterol level, and that means that they're well, and that can be well for them. And I know for me, like, I want my labs to be good, but I also don't hyper obsess over them anymore, because
Mm-hmm.
that the things that I'm doing for my stress levels, my weight management, my diet, my exercise, all of my lifestyle, decisions and choices, I know that those things for me make me feel well. And I think that I will live a long time just based on the changes that I've made. I actually told my partner the other day, we were going for a walk and we were with our dogs, and I said, I don't even know how this came up, but I was like, I'm gonna live a long time. I'm probably gonna live like at least to like 90. And he was like, you'll probably live to over 100. Like, okay, that's good. That's, a good vote of confidence. But and if you asked me that 5 years ago prior to having weight loss surgery, I probably wouldn't have said I probably won't even live to 80. And so to me, like, wellness is also longevity. And again, that's a whole nother conversation and topic about longevity. Um,
Yeah.
but like I am making decisions and choices now to feel well for the purpose of living well long. That makes
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like you, well, and you still are. So you went through the stretch of, having to take care of your parents. When you had your dad with you, your mom is still around. And a lot of people can get really wrapped up into focusing on them and forgetting about themselves. So, what have you done being in those shoes to
yeah.
take care of yourself while caring for the others?
Yeah. So I remember there was a point in time where my dad was still living with me, and growing up, my dad and I were very close. I had a close relationship with my father, and I have to this day a very close relationship with my mother, and I'm very grateful for that. But when my dad got diagnosed with dementia, it was like I was the adult and he was the kid, because
Hmm.
his memory and mentality changed quite a bit pretty quickly. And so I remember there was a point in time where I was just so frustrated and aggravated, and it wasn't like anything he could change, right? I couldn't be like, Dad, you have to do this, this, and this. He wasn't always going to follow direction. And so at the time I was married. And so my ex-husband and I at the time were like, this is not good for any of us, even your dad. It's not fair, to him to be frustrated. And so I remember there was, I think at least one time that I actually did like a week of respite. And so like I had somebody take care of him outside of my home for a week. This was prior to putting him into an assisted living facility. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then when he came back, I hired more caregivers. And obviously, I know not everyone can do that or can afford that. But if you can, almost like caring for a child, it takes a village to take care of a parent that is with dementia or elderly. And so, looking into the resources in your community. And at that point, we didn't even know at that point that there were all these resources. So
Mm-hmm.
my dad was a veteran. He served at the U.S. Air Force. And so I reached out to the VA and the area agency on aging in my county, which most counties in the United States have something like that. And I just told them what was going on. And they were like, oh, well, we have like all of these resources to help you. And I had no idea. Even though I was in nursing, I didn't know. And so, if you are caring for a parent, like, trying to look for the resources in your area sometimes can help, not always. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my ex-husband and I made a mutual decision that it just wasn't good for, me, him, my dad, to be just kind of like at odds with each other because he was truly 24/7 care. And so
Yeah.
I opted to put him into, like I said, a small board and care, or some people call it an assisted living. And that really was the best thing for all of us, even though it was very hard for him and it was very hard for me because I wasn't taking care of myself. I mean, I literally woke up and it was like taking care of a baby all day, every day. They need to be fed, they need to give their medicine, and they need to be showered and changed. And then, lunchtime comes around, dinner time comes around, and it was just a vicious
Yeah.
cycle. And so I can definitely understand and feel the frustration of taking care of their parents, no matter how old they are, because it is a job. It's a big job. Um, and in our country and even in our world, we have a very big aging population right now, and it's only going to grow. And so the people out there that are needing to or having to care for their parents, I would just encourage them, if at all possible, to lean on family or lean on resources that are available to them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we had, like I shared with you, we had lost our mom back in March, and she did live at, she did live at the house for maybe 6 months after our dad had passed. But then her health had started declining and she wasn't able to get around anymore. She was going to live with my late husband and I at the time. And, but then it's like once she got in the hospital and she couldn't really walk around very well with her walker anymore. And then it's kind of like, okay, now she's going to be in a wheelchair pretty much the majority of the rest of her life. And so that just kind of took a whole different spin on things. So then we're like, okay, what do we do here? Because it's like, she can't, and my house was the only house that was big enough for her to come into. But it was like, even that, there's like, well, we both work and who's going to care for her? And yeah, so she ended up going into assisted living, but it was actually a good thing for her because then she was around people and being able to do things. And that was such a blessing because she was always one that always wanted to be constantly doing things and kept busy and all that. And that she was able to do that there. So, which was good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I told you before we did this today, but I had a practice here in the area that I live in that I did mobile primary care for Medicare age patients. And so that was
Okay.
also a love of mine at one time. I don't love that anymore, but I know it's a huge need. Like I said, we are, going into this era where we're going to have these baby boomers that need care and need primary care, and not everyone can jump in the car and go to their doctor. So,
Right.
and that practice is still opened. I left at the beginning of this year, and they're still doing it. And there are more practices like that in this area popping up. And I think and know that there will be more practices nationwide like that. Again, because this just gigantic population that we're going to have over the next 10 to 30 plus years, there already is a lack of care and a lack of availability. So if you're listening to this and you're a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a PA, like wanting to do, a business to serve your community, like that is a good business to get into, but it does take people to help you grow that kind of business. Like it's very difficult to do that business solo or on your own.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that can be lucrative, but also helps your community. So yeah, elderly care, it's such a huge need. And I think and feel, especially here where I live, even though we're in a very populated area and there's a lot of health centers, there's just still not enough. And I can probably say that about most of America. Like there's just not enough access to care for the general population, let alone the elderly one. So
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that just from what I see. And I'm sure
yeah.
you probably see a lot more than I do. So, if somebody listening is struggling with their weight or their energy levels, what is one thing you want them to know?
So, number one, you're not alone. I know sometimes it can really feel like you're the only one or one of few experiencing these things, but it's
Hmm.
actually a big issue with men and women. And a lot of it has to do with lifestyle. A lot of it has to do with toxins that we're exposed to on a daily basis,
Mm,
the air we breathe, the types of foods, the ultra processed foods. There's so many, facets of it, but, definitely know that there are resources for you, even if you're on, a budget or a lower income. Sometimes you can get some help from your insurance-based provider, but you have to have a provider that is compassionate and knowledgeable about some of this stuff. Um,
hmm.
there are more smaller telehealth companies popping up that offer these like comprehensive services, or companies that offer comprehensive labs where you can just go on and buy and don't even need to be a provider. So sometimes those can be beneficial. So if you're listening and you're experiencing these symptoms and you're like, I don't even know where to go for help. Of course, like, I always say to my patients and my family, like, Google is your best friend. Like, Google a company Google a lab company or a provider, whether it's a telehealth provider or somebody in your area that can do this. And of course, if you're listening and you're not in California, I'm licensed in California, Nevada, and Arizona. If you're not
Okay.
one of, I'm happy to talk to patients, tell them, hey, let me find you somebody in your area, because I'm connected to a couple of different NP and physician groups that are nationwide.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I mean, basically, like send a message and say, I have a patient in this city, state, like who can take them? And usually I get a response the same day. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I need your help, with a referral, the referral is free. It's just a message. I would just connect you with a provider that would be able to help you with your consent.
Okay, awesome. So people that live in the areas that you're licensed and all that, how can they learn how to work with you if they're and all that you offer?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, well by AM, so at well by AM, or you can go to wellbyamnursing.com, and it shows, all the offerings that I have, all the services that I have, and pretty much on every page of my website, there's a pop-up or an area where you can, ask somebody to contact you, or you can schedule on my website as well, to just do a free phone consultation. We call it Ask Us Anything, and so you can
Okay.
get on the phone and you can ask me or my team anything that's going on. And if it leads to a consultation, then you would see me as a provider and we would do a virtual visit.
Awesome. And any links that you share with me, I will put them in the show notes. That way everybody has easy access to them.
Okay,
So,
awesome.
so is there something coming up next for Well by AM Nursing that you're excited about?
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad that you asked that. So I'm actually working on some one-on-one and group coaching for the practitioners that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
Also some more offerings for my patients that if they are needing kind of like a health audit, but maybe not like specifically coming to me for weight loss or hormones, but they just need to ask their like pressing health questions. We're
Okay.
offering that, and we're launching that within hopefully the next month, for my like business colleague and then also my patients. So I'll have some more support for my people that are in my world.
Awesome. Awesome. So I do like to end with a question from my guests.
Okay.
So if you were going for a walk outside in a park and somebody happened to come walking towards you and they were drawn to your energy and they came walking up to you and asked you, what is one thing I could do today to start living a more radiant life? How would you answer their question?
Hopefully this is allowed on the podcast, but I would say if they don't know Jesus, they need to give their life to Jesus, and that will open up so many doors for them.
And yes, it's allowed. Pretty much anything is allowed on my podcast. So
Yeah, I'm a big believer in sharing, my testimony, and Jesus saved my life. And I always say, my parents gave me God and gave me Jesus, and but it was, God who instilled that in them to instill in me. So yeah, somebody came to me and was like, I want to have what you have, or I want to live a better life. Even though, all of us, no matter if we know Jesus or not, we're going to go through trials. But the number one thing would be, finding the Lord and walking with.
beautiful, beautiful. Aly, thank you so much for taking time. I enjoyed this conversation. We could have gone down so many different rabbit holes, and maybe some of those rabbit holes, I might have to have you come back and we'll just focus on those conversations.
Love it so much.
Everybody, go follow Aly on social media. Like I said, I'll have any links that she has available in the show notes. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation and found it full of knowledge. Please share this out with anybody that you think needs to hear this. And until next time, from my heart to yours, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying my podcast, I would love it if you'd follow, leave a 5-star review, or subscribe. And definitely please share with anyone that you think would enjoy my podcast. And I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and all the links are in the show notes. And if you'd like to be on my podcast, or if you have any questions for me, or if you have a topic that you'd like me to talk about, please send me a direct message. I enjoy connecting with my followers. Thank you so much for listening.